When HR escorted me to my desk and pulled out a bag of prescription pills I'd never seen before, I knew someone wanted me gone. But it wasn't until IT recovered the deleted security footage that I discovered my coworker had been planting evidence in my desk for 8 months straight, and she'd been documenting her entire scheme in a shared folder she forgot to delete. I'd worked at Meridian Financial Services for 6 years. 6 years of early mornings, late nights, and building a reputation as someone who could solve problems nobody else wanted to touch. I was the senior compliance analyst, and I genuinely loved my job. Then Vanessa Chen transferred to our department. She came from the Chicago office with glowing recommendations, mid-30s, polished, ambitious. Our manager, David, introduced her as someone who would be helping streamline our processes. I welcomed her warmly, showed her around, bought her coffee on her first day. That was my first mistake, thinking this was going to be a normal professional relationship. The small things started within weeks. Reports I'd submitted would have minor errors when they reached David's desk, errors I know weren't there when I sent them. I'd find myself CC'd on emails I'd never seen with replies suggesting I'd dropped the ball on something. I chalked it up to technical glitches. Maybe I was being paranoid. Then the client complaints started. David pulled me into his office looking genuinely confused. "Marcus, I got a call from Henderson Holdings. They said you missed 3 scheduled calls this week and sent them the wrong portfolio analysis." My stomach dropped. "David, I have every call logged. I have email confirmations. I sent them the correct analysis on Monday. I can show you my sent folder." He nodded slowly. "I believe you, but something's not adding up. Just be more careful, okay?" I started documenting everything obsessively. Timestamps on every email, screenshots of completed tasks. I even started BCCing my personal email on important correspondence. Vanessa was always sympathetic. "That's so frustrating," she'd say, her hand on my shoulder. "If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know." 3 months in, I noticed her staying late on the same nights I did. At first, I thought she was just dedicated. Then I noticed she'd always find a reason to walk past my desk when I stepped away, getting water, using the restroom, grabbing something from the printer. I started locking my computer religiously, changed my passwords weekly. The complaints kept coming anyway. My performance review that quarter was the worst I'd ever received. David looked uncomfortable delivering it. "Look, Marcus, your numbers are fine, but we've had concerns about attention to detail and communication. I'm not putting you on a PIP yet, but I need to see improvement." I went home that night and couldn't sleep. 6 years of exemplary reviews, and suddenly I was a problem employee? That's when I started paying closer attention to Vanessa. I noticed she had access to shared drives she shouldn't have had access to. I noticed she'd taken over communicating with 3 of my biggest clients. "Just to help with your workload," she'd said, though I'd never asked for help. I noticed she'd somehow become David's go-to person for questions that used to come to me. But I had no proof of anything, just a growing paranoia that was eating me alive. Month 5 was when things escalated. I came in on a Monday morning to find David and HR waiting at my desk. My heart stopped. "Marcus, we need to have a serious conversation," said Patricia from HR, her face unreadable. "We've received an anonymous complaint about inappropriate behavior." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What kind of inappropriate behavior?" "The complaint alleges you've been making unwanted advances toward a female colleague, following her to her car, sending personal messages outside of work." I literally couldn't speak. My mouth opened and closed like a fish. "This is insane," I finally managed. "I haven't done any of that. Who made this complaint?" "It's anonymous, Marcus. We're required to investigate." The investigation lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks of suspicious looks from coworkers. 2 weeks of being treated like a predator. They interviewed everyone in the department. They checked my email, my messages, my phone logs. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. The complaint was dismissed as unsubstantiated, but the damage was done. People looked at me differently. Conversations stopped when I walked into rooms. I'd been branded, even without evidence. Vanessa was one of the people who'd been interviewed. She told me afterwards how terrible she felt for me. Some people are just vindictive, she said. I told them you've never been anything but professional. I thanked her. I actually thanked her. Month 7 brought the incident that almost ended my career entirely. I came back from lunch to find David, Patricia, and a man I didn't recognize standing at my desk. My drawer was open. "Marcus, can you explain this?" David said, his voice tight. He held up a clear plastic bag. Inside were 2 orange prescription bottles. I stared at them, genuinely bewildered. I've never seen those before in my life. They were in your desk drawer, with your name on the labels. I looked closer. The labels did have my name, but the medication, Adderall, and something I didn't recognize, wasn't anything I'd ever been prescribed. "Someone put those there," I said, my voice rising. "I don't take either of those medications. You can call my doctor. You can drug test me right now. I don't—" "Marcus, please calm down." Calm down? My career was imploding in real time, and they wanted me to calm down? Okay, I need to stop here because this is the moment that changed everything. They were about to fire me for pills I'd never seen before, planted in my own desk. Subscribe if you've ever had someone try to destroy your reputation like this. Drop a comment telling me what would you have done in this moment? Because what I discovered next exposed everything, and you're not going to believe how deep this went. The man I didn't recognize turned out to be from corporate security. They suspended me on the spot pending investigation. I was escorted out of the building carrying a cardboard box of my personal items, walking past Vanessa's desk. She had the decency to look shocked. "Oh my God, Marcus, what happened?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. At home, I fell apart. My wife found me sitting in the dark at 2 in the morning, just staring at the wall. I'd given 6 years to that company. I'd sacrificed weekends, missed family events, poured everything I had into building something. And now I was going to be fired for planted drugs and fabricated harassment claims. But something my wife said that night changed my approach. "Marcus, you keep saying someone is doing this, Gio. If that's true, they must have made mistakes somewhere. Find the mistakes." She was right. If someone was systematically sabotaging me, there had to be a trail. The next morning, I called the pharmacy listed on those prescription bottles. I explained the situation that medications had been found with my name on labels, medications I'd never been prescribed. The pharmacist was confused. "Sir, we don't have any record of filling prescriptions for someone with your name at this location. These labels, they look like ours, but the format is slightly off. The lot number doesn't match our system." Fake labels. Someone had created fake prescription labels with my name. I documented the call. Then I called my actual doctor, got a letter confirming I'd never been prescribed either medication. I also requested a drug test from an independent lab and passed with flying colors. I submitted everything to HR with a formal request for the security footage from the area around my desk for the past several months. Patricia seemed reluctant, but I reminded her that I had a right to evidence in my own investigation. 3 days later, I got a call that changed everything. It was from someone in IT named Jerome. He spoke quietly, like he was afraid of being overheard. "Mr. Williams, I shouldn't be calling you, but I recovered something during a routine server backup audit. There's a folder on the shared drive that someone deleted, but our backup system caught it before it was fully removed. I think you need to see this." I drove to meet Jerome at a coffee shop near the office. He handed me a USB drive, his hands shaking slightly. "I could lose my job for this," he said, "but what I found, it's not right. Someone's been trying to destroy you." I took the drive home and opened it on my laptop. The folder was labeled Project Transition. Inside were dozens of files, screenshots, documents, a detailed timeline. Vanessa had documented everything. There were photos of my desk with timestamps, photos taken at odd hours when the office should have been empty. There were draft emails, practice versions of complaint letters. There was a receipt for prescription label printing from an online service. And there was a document titled Phase Implementation. It was a literal step-by-step plan to get me fired and take my position. Phase 1, establish trust and access. Phase 2, create pattern of errors and complaints. Phase 3, Anonymous harassment allegation to damage reputation. Phase 4, plant controlled substances to force termination. She'd written it all down, every single step. But the most damning evidence was in a subfolder labeled Security. Vanessa had been downloading security camera footage and deleting the segments that showed her accessing my desk. What she didn't realize was that the backup system Jerome worked with captured data before deletion. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. Vanessa, at my desk at 7:30 in the morning before anyone else arrived, opening my drawer, placing something inside, closing it carefully, walking away. I watched her do it on 4 separate dates. I took everything to a lawyer that afternoon. He reviewed the evidence and his eyebrows climbed higher with every document. "Mr. Williams, this is extraordinary. He essentially created a prosecution file against himself." We presented the evidence to HR the following Monday. I wasn't allowed in the building, so my lawyer went on my behalf. I sat in my car in the parking lot, watching the front entrance. 3 hours later, I watched Vanessa walk out with a security escort carrying her own cardboard box. She saw me sitting there. Our eyes met through my windshield. I expected anger, defiance, something. Instead, her face just crumpled. She looked away and kept walking. Patricia called me that evening with a formal apology. The investigation had confirmed everything. Vanessa had been systematically sabotaging me for nearly 8 months, attempting to force my termination so she could claim my position. They discovered she'd done something similar at the Chicago office. A colleague there had taken early retirement after a series of mistakes that damaged his reputation. Nobody had connected the dots until now. I was reinstated with back pay for my suspension, but I didn't go back immediately. I took 2 weeks to decompress, to process the absolute violation of what had happened. When I did return, David pulled me into his office. "Marcus, I owe you a massive apology. I should have trusted your track record. I should have questioned the pattern instead of accepting it at face value." I appreciated the words, but they didn't erase 8 months of psychological warfare, the sleepless nights, the damage to my reputation, the feeling of losing my mind while everyone around me questioned my competence. "David, I need you to understand something. This didn't happen in a vacuum. The systems we have in place, they made this possible. Anonymous complaints with no verification, investigations that treat accusations as fact before gathering evidence, access controls that let someone manipulate shared files." He nodded slowly. "You're right, we're implementing changes." They did implement changes. Better access logging, mandatory verification for anonymous complaints, regular security footage audits. Small steps, but meaningful ones. Vanessa was terminated for cause and is currently facing potential criminal charges for the fake prescription scheme. The pills she planted were actually controlled substances. She'd apparently purchased them illegally online specifically to frame me. I'm still at Meridian. Part of me wanted to leave, to escape the memories, but I realized that leaving would feel like letting her win, even after everything. My coworkers who looked at me sideways have mostly come around. A few have apologized directly for doubting me. Others just pretend the whole thing never happened. I'm learning to live with both responses. The biggest lesson I took from this experience: trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Document everything. And never assume that someone who seems friendly has your best interests at heart. Vanessa spent 8 months trying to destroy my career with planted evidence and manufactured complaints. What she didn't count on was the digital trail she left behind, or the IT guy who decided to do the right thing. Sometimes the systems that can be used against you are the same ones that can save you. You just have to find the right person willing to look. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever dealt with a coworker who tried to sabotage you, or if you've witnessed this kind of workplace manipulation, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next story. And if you have your own workplace nightmare you want to share, drop it in the comments or send us a message. Your story could be featured in an upcoming video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.